Disclaimer, my Japanese is not perfect. There may be mistakes in this translation. If you notice any, feel free to DM me at melonsmask4sk on Twitter so I can correct. Thank you.
Don't worry, this whole chapter is a mistake.
Pista. Pista.
Trish Una had a full view of the town and sea from the small hill she was standing on. A refreshing breeze was blowing.
A dots.
She was standing in front of a grave. The headstone was fairly small and included a respectable amount of humble decorations. There was another grave next to it, but it looked relatively simple and plain. The two neighboring tombstones were each engraved with the name of the deceased. One was his father's name. The father's headstone was simple, as his son didn't have much money when it was built. There had been talk about his son giving him a more worthy grave someday, but he had died himself before he was able to do so. When he was buried, people brought up rebuilding his father's gravestone as well. But a friend of his father's fishing buddies asserted,
Nah, he definitely wouldn't want that. He'd want to sleep peacefully in his grave as it was built by his son.
So it was left alone. The calm atmosphere might make those who visited there feel at peace, but they couldn't imagine. The person resting there, Bruno Bucciarati, was a former leader of the secret society Passione.
Fucking Illuminati. Illuminati,
Yeah.
secret society. Fucking are you Passione? Yeah, boy. Fuck, so secret. Holy shit, I'm pissing my pants.
Most members of Passione will dress like normal people, and then his fucking gang is out there with their titties out. It had been a key person in the dark network that laid the foundation for the organization that was now growing at a rapid pace. A very important person and whatnot. Contrary to the bloodiness of his life, where many people had come close to killing him, and where he had sometimes killed as well, his grave was simple, with no visible trace of pointless gaudiness or twisted vanity.
8 dots.
It was Trish's first time coming to this grave. She hadn't attended the burial. The boy with the curly blonde hair had prevented her from doing so, saying it was better if she didn't go. Nevertheless, she had finally ended up coming today. She had brought a single white flower, which she had placed in front of the headstone. She had struggled with what to bring, and ultimately went for the tulip.
I thought about what I should do, and hey, your hairstyle resembles a tulip, so it's a lame joke. Shut the fuck up! I thought about what I should do, and hey, your hairstyle resembles a tulip, so it's a lame joke, but I just felt like gave a small giggle.
She had come here today by chance, as there were things she had stopped. She had come here today by chance, as there were things she had stopped in town to do.
Moving yourself to someone's grave, right? And
Yeah.
first you fucking come on their grave, and then you make a shitty pun with the fucking tulip, and then it'd be like, lol, yeah, moves fucking away. This is the biggest fucking violation. What the fuck? This goes beyond just touching a corpse. This fucked up.
She had come here today by chance, as there were things she had stopped in town to do. She was taking a shot at restarting her singing career after it had been interrupted by her mother's death, and was on her way home from one of her jobs appearing on the town's radio station. She was supposed to return to the company immediately, but had told her manager that she couldn't, and made time to visit the grave.
It's harder than I expected, Bucciarati. I'm busy with a lot of things now. It's different when I was being shuffled around by you guys doing as I was told, she muttered before giving out a sigh.
The days that had felt like a storm of restlessness, fear, and courage had long since passed.
Courage? What the fuck does courage have to do in this storm of fucking restless fear?
Nowadays, she felt like it had all been some sort of dream. But it wasn't a dream, and Bucciarati was really resting underneath the gravestone.
Ah, that's right. He is really.
Closing her eyes and looking upward, she stood still in the silence until a timid voice sounded from behind her. I'm just wondering, did you by any chance know Bruno? When she turned towards the voice, Trish saw a well-dressed woman standing there alone. Her face was pretty and practically void of wrinkles. She looked like she could still be considered a young lady, but her expression was somewhat somber.
Fucking Slash.
Trish gave a soft gasp. The resemblance was uncanny. There was no doubt that they were related.
Are you Bucciarati's mother?
The woman nodded in response as she bowed. Yes, I am. But I hardly had a chance to see him recently. When I got the news, it was already time for the funeral. Did you also attend?
No, Oop. No, I. No, I. Slash.
Trish shook her head. She didn't care if she was accused of being a heartless girl. But his mother was looking at me. By any chance, do you know how he died? You were there back then, weren't you? She said.
What the fuck are those, like, little comments? You were there back then, weren't you? That sounds like she thinks that her fucking son overdosed on some fucking heroin, and everybody said that he died in a boss fight, and she's like, yeah, the boss fight, he died. Yeah, okay, sure. Fucking hell.
Bucciarati does crack once and die. Her assumption was right on the mark. At a loss for words, Trish went silent. She recalled the scene from back then.
Hey, Bucciarati?
Misa addressed him in a shaky voice, but the man lying on the pavement gave no response. Though his eyelids were open, his eyes no longer saw anything. Bucciarati was clearly dead. They were at the Roman Colosseum. It was where their last battle had taken place, where they had finally managed to defeat the enemy Diavolo after a vicious fight. They could still hear some commotion nearby, the chaos that the battle had caused throughout the whole city still in the process of settling. Only this area seemed to be cut off from the confusion, a strange silence falling.
4 dots. What the hell, Bucciarati? Are you messing around? Come on, that's enough.
Mista shook his body, but there was no response.
What?
Trish was stunned seeing him in that state. She couldn't believe it either. Bucciarati was supposed to still be safe, so why was he apparently dead here? And what else could this be besides right after death?
Oh, I see.
Just as she had that thought, an awful cracking sound echoed in the vicinity. Thank you. It was the sound of bones crumbling in the body that Mista was shaking. He instinctively pulled back with the start, but even if the bones were broken, the body couldn't have said anything about it.
Bro, imagine shaking your friend so bad you fucking break his fucking ribcage.
He instinctively pulled back with a start, but even if the bones were broken, the body couldn't have said anything about it. Finally, the third person among them, the boy holding the turtle to his chest, opened his mouth. It's enough, Mista. He's been dead for a long time. He isn't coming back. The quiet voice resonated heavily around them.
He's not?
Mista turned toward the boy, who nodded. You must have already realized it too. Bucciarati originally died back when we first ran into Diavolo. He had been working with the dead body up until now.
Shut the fuck up. Just read the thing.
No, you will understand. Maybe.
What's so funny about Bucciarati fucking, like, dying?
Maybe it was because of this power. Maybe his determination caused a miracle. I can't say for certain, but Bucciarati fought while matter of fact, logical.
Oh my god.
Matter of fact, logical.
I'll fucking kill you.
Okay. Matter of fact, logical. These were words that left no room for any doubt.
/ exclamation mark. Go with I don't give a fuck anymore. Sure.
Mista moved in a flash. Kicking the ground, he put distance between them, jumped into an opportune position, and held up his gun, aiming at his target, right in the middle of the boy's forehead.
/
Even with the barrel of the gun directed at him, the boy appeared completely calm. He just stood there without even letting go of the turtle he was holding in his hand.
What the hell is this?
Mista asked the boy in a shaking voice. Again, he just said quietly, "You should realize it now. Then there's nothing to wonder about."
Don't fuck with me!
Mista yelled, scowling at him.
Explain! Give me a damn good
The boy didn't reply, however, simply staring back at Mista silently. An increasingly intense aura simmered between them. The mood was hot like a flame and cold like water at the same time. Trish had moved during all the hostility.
Somebody stop them. She thought?
Fuck off!
She thought? Somebody stop them.
She thought, turning her gaze toward Bucciarati. But naturally, that body couldn't say anything anymore.
The fuck? It's your thought. What do you mean say anything? Okay. What are you doing?
She called out to him in her head.
You're the one who brought us up to this place. Why aren't you saying anything, now that we're here? She wanted to scream.
But his body stayed still as Mista continued pointing the barrel of his gun at the boy, ready to kill.
You mean he knew everything this whole damn time? Encouraging Bucciarati, letting him betray the boss?
The boy responded to Mista's trembling voice with a crystal clear declaration. That's right! That's right. The wrinkles in Misa's forehead were etched so deeply that they could have been carved. And you'll... Fuck.
I can see one below and I'm losing my shit. Okay, continue reading. I've seen the line that will make me lose my shit.
No, that's not even the part. Oh my god, that's not even the part.
It's not even the part?
And you already know I was the one leading. But this was what Bucciarati wanted and decided on his own. He hoped that someone would give him a push. I was only helping him. You know that Bucciarati wasn't the sort of man to let other people force him or to waver in his convictions. The boy didn't falter at all. Misa's entire body was shaking and trembling, but with the habit... Bro.
What?
Oh god. The boy didn't falter at all. Misa's entire body was shaking and trembling. With a habit that was deeply instilled in him, his pistol didn't move an inch. No matter how shaken he was a formidable gunman who always kept his aim.
You. Who the fuck do you think you are?
Misa shouted, staring directly into the other's eyes. The boy said, "I, Giorno Giovanna, have a dream."
You.
That was his catchphrase, words that Mista had heard often during the course of the violent battle. "Right now you have two paths," he said, as if admonishing him. Then, suddenly, he asked, "Mista, you hate the number 4, right?" Fuck.
Oh my god. I see what's coming. Oh shit.
Mista, you hate the number 4, right?
Yeah? What about it?
At Mista's puzzled frown, the boy continued. "Right now, if you shoot me, that will make me the 4th one. Would you be okay with that?"
That what the fuck?
Don't shoot me, I will be the 4th dead person.
What? How the fuck does this what?
The corner of Misa's mouth began to twitch.
Are you fucking kidding me? I'm like fucking. You killed one of the people that I looked up to. Fucking telling me about the number 4? You're an insane clusterfuck of a bastard.
The corner of Misa's mouth began to twitch. He understood what the boy was saying. Fuck. He understood what the boy was saying. Their teammates the ones who had been sacrificed. Leonia Bacchio, Bruno Bucciarati.
Daddy.
Fucking hell! 3 of them were already dead. If Giorno was killed here, then that would indeed be the 4th sacrifice.
That's...
Mista broke out into a cold sweat, his back teeth beginning to chatter.
That's just a stretch, really.
Mista forced himself to yell. You're absolutely right. You have your obsession, Mista, but it doesn't matter to me. You're the only one who will have a problem with it. It's up to you to decide. Oh my god. Fucking hell. Right now, you have 2 paths you can choose. One is to take down the despicable person who caused your teammates' deaths, to settle everything so far. That in itself should be meaningful. In addition, you would end up freeing yourself from the uneasy life of this 4th curse that you're bound by.
Dots, at least it's not 4.
Yeah, it's 2 times 4.
Shut up.
And the other one, the path where you keep living with this obsession. This obsession of yours is important, and this way of thinking means that you won't pull the trigger at this very moment. If you choose a life where you can from now, when you find yourself in that position, I won't hesitate to choose that 4th in your place. That is one of my responsibilities.
All of those, like, dots fucking trigger me.
Yeah.
What?
Misa's throat made a strange gulping noise. He swallowed. Swallow. What are you? Shut up. What? What are you going to do now?
You already know that too.
For a moment, Misa looked furious at the boy's words, holding his pistol at the ready again, and he pulled the trigger. A gunshot rang.
5 dots and exclamation.
Trish instinctively closed her eyes and covered her ears, crouching in place. The echo of the gunshots faded into the vast space of the Colosseum. Everything was dead silent. Trish nervously opened her eyes and saw Misa's figure. Smoke was rising from the barrel of his gun. Following the direction in which it was pointing, smoke could also be seen rising up from the point of impact. There were holes in the pavement. In front of this, the boy holding the turtle was standing. There were 3 holes. Upon confirming this,
Just like a bowling ball.
Mista made the world his bowling ball. There were 3 holes. Upon confirming this, the boy gave a calm smile. As I thought, you didn't fire 4 shots, did
Don't look down on me. My obsession is a universal truth. There's not a single guy who can change that. So, if there's a time when you give up on being a member of Team Bucciarati, if you re-announce being that 4, then I'll be putting a bullet right through your brain. Got it?
Mista spun his pistol around in his hand and put it away. Carrying the turtle under his arm, the boy slowly walked over and knelt down beside Bucciarati's body. Reaching out a hand, he gently stroked the pale face. He addressed the corpse in a sincere whisper. Bucciarati, when we first met, you licked my cheek. But there won't be any more lies. I swear on your soul.
That's good, Giorno. Good, Giorno.
I learned this from you, Bucciarati. You like my mouth sounds, Bruno.
I do like your mouth, Giorno.
Wow, you learned my name. That's so rad.
Shut the fuck up, Giorno. I'm dead.
Okay. Your cheek feels very soft. Okay.
I'll fucking slap you. Don't fucking say that ever again. Those balls belong to Abakio, and he's doing it.
Okay. Misa was standing beside him. Right at that moment, in the middle of a troubled, dirty, crooked, and archaic world, there was a brand new glow. Passione was reborn.
Triple dot.
The boy lifted his head to look at Trish, who was vacantly watching the spectacle, and said, "This is as far as you go, Trish Una."
You didn't buy tickets on any more fucking rides, you stay here, bitch.
Said it alive.
It was a declaration. You're going off this train. The happy train. This is the happy train's final destination.
Choo choo.
And then the fucking Thomas the Tank Engine, like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It was a declaration. Even now, she remembered it clearly. It was engraved in her mind. The image of Bucciarati motionless on a pavement back then. But that wasn't exactly how he had died. They had just found out that he had already been dead for a long time. For her, Bucciarati was a lifesaver, representing the courage to forge one's destiny without hesitation, a light vigorously pursued in the darkness. But he was dead now. The road where she had relied on him had come to him for support and followed close behind him. The truth was that it had been over from the very beginning. He had already been affixed with a purpose-served label and sent to the afterlife. She wondered how she could explain that. She wondered how she would be able to express it, how she would be able to inform his mother of her son's fate. Trish was at a loss for words when Bucciarati's mother gave a sigh and said, "I wonder if he resented me." Although it seemed like a question, it almost had the sorrow of a soliloquy. When we got divorced, he chose to stay with his father and not me. Honestly, even now I'm a little bitter. I don't know why he always had to choose the hard way. Who's to blame? Was I that awful? She hung her head, her shoulders shaking. Even though Trish was nearly petrified of the painful feelings rising up from the bottom of her heart, she walked over to her and gently placed a hand on her back.
He didn't resent anyone, I'm sure of it,
she said. But
he had a very awesome butt on.
Yeah.
I had some serious problems with my real father, and I had him help me. That's when he said it. I told him I was worried about whether or not I would be able to like my father. He immediately told me with no hesitation. No parent and their child worry about such things. I'm sure that he didn't think badly of his parents at all.
Trish spoke in a steady stone.
Stone?
Rolling Stones. Woo! We are all slaves of fate. Wow. Okay. Trish spoke in a steady tone that surprised even herself. Why was she saying it so arrogantly? Didn't she seem like the kind of person that other people considered a spoiled and selfish daughter anyway? Bucciarati and the others who protected her were strange, and she wondered if in a way Fugo had been right in abandoning her. Sure, because one could say that it was also her fault that Abacchio and Arancia died. How could she assert such a thing so proudly to a mother whose son had died? Deep down, Trish was strangely conflicted. Bucciarati's mother lifted her head and said with a bit of a curious expression, "There's something familiar about."
Then she grabbed her chin with two of her fingers and smooched the shit out of that bitch. The end.
When I told him that we were getting a divorce, his eyes, they looked like that back then. Why? She asked. Trish naturally had no way of knowing what things were like back then, but why did she feel like she could picture young Bucciarati in her mind?
That's just...
Trish softly shook her head. I'm just tired.
I'm tired of your shit, Juliet. That's what
my god! Oh, ow. Trish softly shook her head and said,
"Oh shit, you actually did it." I guess it's because I was acting like him. We're not the same, but I was thinking I wanted to be like him.
"Do you think Bruno was happy?" When his mother asked this, thinking about her son, Trish didn't have to feel conflicted.
I'm sure that he had no regrets. I believe he died telling his friends his last wishes, but I, unfortunately, didn't get to be a part of that circle.
She gave a gloomy smile. That was right. Bucciarati had no regrets. Mista and the others couldn't afford to look back, but only Trish's heart was left behind somewhere in the Coliseum, living suspended in the air. Bucciarati's mother took a long look at Trish. "What did you think of Bruno?" She asked it bluntly, but Trish didn't hesitate.
He was an awful person. The fuck, bitch? Even though he rescued me from hopelessness and wanted me to keep my will to live, in the end, I just got abandoned.
She said with a wry smile.
Ree!
She said with a wry smile. Okay. His mother was silent for a moment, but then gave a similar smile. Was he now? He was that kind of kid for me too. He was really smart, and seemed like he could do anything. He even let me dream, choosing his father and not his mother. He ended up throwing me away. An awful...
Yeah, let's shit on Bucciarati's grave, literally. Fucking nice DLC. Like, did you like the story DLC? Let's shit on Bucciarati. Beautiful, yeah.
The two of them smiled just the same, trembled just the same, and their eyes welled up with tears just the same. Trish looked up at the sky. Clouds passed overhead with considerable speed.
Considerable speed. That doesn't sound very good.
As Trish murmured this, a gust of wind blew the white tulip she had placed in front of the headstone, sending it landing onto the fresh grass.
Sending it landing, beautiful. Also, what the fuck?